we get these messages that we should be reducing meat consumption for some of the things that you mentioned there around saturated fat intake. And we have associations that then, propagate these messages, which are, one side of group of experts would say that this is evidence-based, and yet you have another side that would say, well, this isn't evidence-based. This is, a little bit too myopic. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, there's definitely now a large concern about both the environmental and human health effects of red meat. And a lot of this, at least from the human health perspective, is based on epidemiological data where we associate single foods, in this case red meat, with deleterious outcomes such as heart disease or diabetes, obesity, you name it, and it has been associated with it. An important part is that I think diet quality is an important portion there, because if you can see on some of these studies, like the Healthy Shopper studies or the Oxford EPIC cohort or the Albertus Tomorrow project, what you can see is that once diet quality increases, you see that these associations between red meat and human health largely become neutral. Mm-hmm. So there is obviously this concern with people that tend to eat more red meat also tend to exercise less, tend to eat less fruits and vegetables, tend to maybe be of general less healthy lifestyle factors. So those are definitely important nuances to recognize. And it is often true that, and also supported by randomized controlled trials, that when consumed as part of a wholesome diet, potentially also rich in fruits and vegetables, some of these associations may disappear. And we know this from mechanistic data too. The combination of, and I think the French were up to something when they drank a glass of red wine with their meat, right? Including some of these polyphenols and including herbs and other plant foods, fruits and vegetables, and eating them in combination with meat also can make some of these mutagenic compounds, or they can render them mostly ineffective and reduce their issues. So don't want to say that there's no potential issue with eating red meat, but I do think that diet in which this is consumed is a huge modulating factor. And this is not uncommon. This is always mankind, where we offset maybe the bad of one food with the good of another food, right? Mm-hmm. Even traditional cultures eating clay with their potatoes so they get rid of their toxins. I mean, you can draw that parallel to red meat and fruits and vegetables too, where you bind it to, because obviously from animal foods we do get a plethora of nutrients that are not just beyond zinc, vitamin B, iron, but also some of these extended compounds, some more complex terpenoids like squalene or cysteamine. Cysteamine is, for instance, an important precursor to glutathione, which is a main antioxidant in the body. Antioxidant. Yeah, and we know about taurine, for instance, and anserine, which are very important for cognitive function and play a central role in many cellular processes. And these are exclusively found in animal source foods, and especially for young children and for cognitive development, that those things can be important. So while arguably, yes, we can reduce our red meat consumption in Western civilization, there is a need also to make sure that this stays balanced, and obviously also has to be looked at in the context of overall dietary patterns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you touched on a few things there. One of them is, in Europe, if you're in France or Spain or Italy, you're always eating meat with vegetables, with salads, with veggies, with olive oil, sometimes with a glass of wine. Whereas oftentimes when we think of the stereotypical North American meal, it's sort of like steak and potatoes. And if you watch any sitcoms, it's always the dad doesn't eat any vegetables at all. And that's kind of the running joke of trying to get them to eat more vegetables. So there's that whole piece to it. And then there's also that part of processed versus unprocessed meat, right? I mean, in terms of actual, if you're having beef or a steak versus, heavily processed sausage or hamburger, can you touch on that and how that changes the story?
Absolutely, no, Mark, and it's good that you point out that even there's a nuance within the processing, because even in some associative data, and this is more out of, like, for instance, I'm thinking about this in Morocco and some other North African and Middle Eastern countries, where you actually, this is also observational data, but where these traditional processing techniques like salt fermentation versus nitrate curing, for instance, which is what we do generally in a sort of a modern industrial setting, but doing more of a traditional processing of the meat, it's actually not associated with some of these negative health outcomes of red meat. So even there you could say, yes, processed meat, but are we looking at the meat itself, or are we looking at more of these modern processing techniques, right? Because a lot of these the more modern techniques that we use, such as nitrate curing or some of the additives that we do to get this that are found in processed meats, right? Yeah, those can alter the healthfulness of the product. And most of our modern ways of processing are for convenience, their efficiency, but they're not necessarily best interest of our health.